Let's get some reaction now with political analyst Dr. Dale McKinley. Doctor, thank you so much for your time. It's great to have you with us today. So what do you make of the president's response to AfriForum, right? Bearing in mind that when this issue had initially started, the presidential spokesperson said the president would not meet with the AfriForum group following the public outcry.
Yes, good afternoon, Alicia, and to the viewers as well. Look, I think the president was correct, generally speaking, in terms of his response. I actually think it was quite judicious. I think it was quite restrained, given what AfriForum is doing. It's a situation which is, I think, a very difficult one to navigate, given our history in this country and given the role of particular sections of the Afrikaner community. And I say that specifically particular sections, not the Afrikaners as a whole, as a group of people, and the latest maneuvers by AfriForum and Solidarity to sort of double down on their previous announcements and their previous engagements with the Trump administration. So I think the president has indicated that the way to solve these issues, if you have issues, is to do so here in our country with our processes. Nobody is being told that they can't say things or can't disagree with them. We have our own laws. We have our own freedoms here. And I think, it would be the same as, basically other sections of the South African society running to other governments, whether they were the U.S. or otherwise, and asking them to interfere and to basically make common cause with a very small section of our population. And I think that's wrong. And I think the vast majority of South Africans know it's wrong.
Absolutely. Doctor, yesterday, actually, our U.S. correspondent in New York actually had engaged with Mr. Kali Kriel of AfriForum, and we actually played his response to him, the voice note that he had sent him, in which he had strongly suggested that their mandate and what they will be engaging with the U.S. presidential team at this particular time was private, so as not to also create counter-narratives, right, before they could conclude their visit. But we do know that AGOA and what the group calls racial laws in South Africa are some of the main issues that they're currently lobbying on. So what do you think should have been the initial best action or reaction by AfriForum in light of how the initial campaign actually led to the halting of the US aid, as well as misconceptions about what's going on in the country?
Yeah, so I think, when AfriForum, this is not new, these kinds of complaints and these kinds of claims, should we say, around Bella, around the Expropriation Act, around discrimination, racial discrimination against, according to them, Afrikaner people. These things have been there in this sort of space for quite some time. Once they made them public and once they started the public campaign and sort of approached the Trump administration, and the initial responses by the presidency, and I think many South Africans, what they should have done was they should have said, listen, we would take this into the institutions of our own government. AfriForum and Solidarity have representatives. They have spaces that they can do that in Parliament, in the public sector here, within the public spaces. Running again and then going to the White House and then saying we're going to have private conversations is just nonsensical. And I think AfriForum and Solidarity need to be very careful. They need to be very careful about what they're doing and understand that they're doing these things in a context in which it's fine to disagree. It's fine to have different perspectives. But when you stoke racial tensions and when you make claims that are clearly factually false, which have been proven to do so, then you're stepping on very, very kind of shaky ground. And my sense and advice to AfriForum and Solidarity, I think, which is not certainly my own, but many people would probably say the same, is to come back home, engage, and do things within our laws, within the confines here. Because I think they're going to find that Donald Trump is a very sort of fair weather friend. He changes his positions day to day. Next week, it could be completely different. And if they think that they can rely on him and his administration to serve their interest, I think they are sorely mistaken.
And we know that the issue of their action, AfriForum, Doctor, in this regard, their actions amounting to being treason, have actually been dispelled in quite a lot of platforms. I mean, South Africa, we know right now, is currently in charge of the G20 presidency, the first on African soil. So what are some possible ramifications of this debacle, Doctor, not only for South Africa and US in terms of relations, but on the ground here in the country?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Alicia. I think the first one, let's look at the ramifications on a more global scale. And this is ironic. So here we have a situation where AfriForum and Solidarity are basically making a plea to the Trump administration to intervene and put pressure on our government around this Expropriation Act. But fundamentally, they know that the renewal of AGOA, the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, is coming up very soon. And that there is quite a political lobby within the U.S. that wants to cancel and wants to push South Africa out of that agreement. Now, if that happens, some of their very members are going to be the ones that are going to be hurt the most, farmers within particular sectors in terms of their exports and their markets. So you see what they're doing, what you hear Solidarity saying, no, we want to leave AGOA out. We only want intervention in this kind of case. So the ramifications could be that they're actually hurting not only the country in general, but their own constituents themselves, and they're going to shoot themselves in the foot. But the ramifications at home, I think, are even more potentially damaging, which is that we're still a country, even 30 years after our democracy came and after they're getting rid of apartheid, which has deep fissures, particularly on racial and class grounds. This is no secret. And when you stoke those fires, when you start basically saying that, we as a minority, a minority of a minority, essentially, a particular section of the Afrikaner community is being racially discriminated against and we are being treated as unequals, that hits a nerve. That hits a nerve with a lot of South Africans, particularly poor South Africans, predominantly Black South Africans, who are the ones that are very poor, the ones that have not had the opportunities that most of the Afrikaners and whites have had in this country, who are struggling on a daily basis. And when they hear that, I think they become rightfully angry. And they become, and then it stokes those tensions, and it makes things more difficult in terms of finding a way forward to get past that apartheid legacies. So in some ways, that's why I say to Solidarity and to AfriForum, don't play with fire. When that fire can get out of control and consume yourself as well. I think they need to sit back, they need to rethink their strategies, and they need to rethink that they can have their say, they can have their voice, they can make disagreements, but do so in a way that is constructive as opposed to destructive.
Along the way, undoing all the post-apartheid gains there, Doctor. Very quickly in closing, let's now look at the Minister and the Presidency's earlier briefing regarding the budget speech postponement, as well as that decision on the M23 and conflict in the DRC. Quick one, Doctor.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, I think in relation to, the DRC, I mean, it's a very difficult situation, but we definitely need to rethink the strategic approach into the DRC. It's not working. The peacekeeping is clearly not working. The situation there is rapidly gaining a much more regional character. So I think it's about, if we really are truly interested in that peacekeeping role, let's do that, not necessarily putting troops on the ground, but actually diplomatically doing those kinds of things. So I think in that case, that's the way that we should go. And in relation to cabinet, I think, in terms of the GNU and the budget and these kinds of things, I think in some ways the president struck the right tone, which is to say, look, we have disagreements. We're always going to have disagreements. Let's not get too excited about the fact that we're not going to break up immediately over these things. Let's let the process move. We're a society that argues and debates, and that's good. Let's embrace that and not necessarily react to everything and say that it's a crisis situation. I would agree with that position.
Doctor, thank you so much for your input this afternoon. That is Dr. Dale McKinley, a political analyst, weighing in on the latest on AfriForum's US trip as well as the budget speech here at home.